Hello everyone, and welcome back to another solo spooky story. My name is Rob, and today I'll be your host. For anyone that doesn't know, the solo spooky stories are shorter episodes, generally 10-15 minutes in length. It's just one person talking, generally myself, talking about something that interests me, something that's come up through listener submission, or something that may not necessarily have enough content in it for a full episode, but we still want to talk about it. We've had a range of topics so far. A lot of cryptids for some reason, actually, which has been pretty cool, and some ghost stories as well. So they kind of range across the whole spectrum of spooky, which I like to keep it interesting for you. So as listeners of the podcast will know, I am definitely our resident UFO person, and yeah, I think it's fair to say between myself and Suze, I'm the one who consumes a lot more UFO related stories than she would. So I think it's only natural that I would choose a series of UFO stories to feature on the solo stories as well. So today I'm going to be talking about Irish UFOs. And the reason why I'm talking about kind of a few of them is that there's not actually a huge amount of information out there on Irish UFOs. Some information that is out there is quite surprising though, and I felt it would kind of do the story of Irish UFOs justice by giving more than one example, and to kind of see what you think yourselves and to maybe explore further stories in future. So to get things started, I recently discovered that Ireland is somewhat of a UFO hotbed in Europe. According to an article that I found from 2021 in the Irish Post, Ireland is effectively the top of the list in Europe for UFO sightings, which is just mad. I had no idea about this. Apparently, Ireland came out in 2021 with 105, for 2020, 105 UFO sightings, compared to France, which came in second with 71 sightings, which is just mad. I had no idea that there were so many UFO sightings in Ireland, and apparently the average length of time as well that UFOs were visible was 13 minutes. So this kind of blew my mind a little bit. I had no idea. So yeah, as I said, we've had 105 sightings in 2020, and then on top of that, they're on average for 13 minutes. And from what I can see, the most common occurrence of sightings is a series of unexplainable bright lights seen flying quite high in the sky. So these seem to be like high altitude lights traversing the sky, and on average for 13 minutes. So, you know, they're fairly prevalent, I suppose, if you think about it. Like if you split, you know, an average year, 365 days, if you've got 105 sightings, like that's just under a third. When you kind of look at it like that, it's very basic maths, but it kind of puts it into perspective, I suppose. It's quite a lot. Something else I discovered about Europe is that flying discs are actually the most prevalent type of UFO spotted in Europe, followed by bright lights. So I just found it very interesting that in Europe as a whole, the kind of classic flying saucer shape is the most reported UFO type. But then in Ireland, the most reported sight is actually bright lights. So I just found that quite interesting. So the first story I'm going to talk about today is one from 1962, where an airline pilot for Aer Lingus, the Irish national airline, the pilot's name is Gordon Pendleton. He was flying from Cork to Brussels on the 21st of May 1962. And he was flying an Aer Lingus plane called St. Columkill. Classic Irish, by the way, naming our planes after saints. Have to love it. Just really getting it in there. And as he was flying with his co-pilot Peter Murphy, he came across a strange object in the sky. And at first, he thought it was an aircraft. But as he got closer, he actually noticed that the object didn't have any wings. And I actually have a direct quote from him talking about this. He says, "We saw a globular object approximately 5 miles ahead of us." So he then thought, okay, it has no wings. Maybe it's some sort of meteorological balloon. I know, classic weather balloon. But, you know, he's a pilot, so he's trying to kind of think with reason here, what could these things be? And he, I think, initially thought that it could be a balloon, but then realized that the speed that it was traveling at meant that there could be no way that this was a balloon. So he actually said that it was traveling so fast. He estimated that the speed between his aircraft and this aircraft coming towards him was about 1,000 miles an hour. He said that he himself was traveling at 300 miles an hour, so he estimated that the speed that the craft was traveling at was approximately 600 to 700 miles an hour, which is like just mad when you think about it. Like, that is very, very fast. So he reported the object. He just said that he had absolutely no idea what it could be, and he passed on the report to London Airways. When he was kind of asked about it more by the news, he said that it was smaller than a Viscount aircraft, which, for anyone that doesn't know, a Viscount is basically this like classic 1950s passenger plane. Imagine kind of like Indiana Jones style plane, you know, the ones where they're like shiny silver and everyone gets on them. I looked them up. They can fit between a maximum of 24 to 32 people. So they're like not a small plane by any means, but they would be quite small in comparison to today's planes. But he says that it was smaller than a Viscount aircraft, but still quite sizable when you think about it. So that was his story. He witnessed it, and he also says that his co-pilot Peter Murphy also witnessed it as well. The interesting thing about this whole story, though, is that Gordon Pendleton, or Captain Pendleton as he was known, he actually was in the Royal Air Force before joining Aer Lingus in 1952. So this lad came in kind of around World War II or the end of World War II. He's used to seeing objects in the sky. He's used to seeing planes in the sky. He knows what he's looking out for. He's able to tell you what's a plane and what isn't. So if this pilot, this RAF trained pilot, is confused, I would be more inclined to give him, you know, the bit of reasonable doubt than someone else. Like, this guy is trained. He knows what he's looking at. If he's telling you he doesn't know what it is, I am more inclined to believe him than, you know, maybe others. So that's the first one. And then the other story that I found, which is much more modern, it's from 1993, and I love this. This came from a news broadcast from 1993, and it's beautiful. The name of it, it's from the 31st of March 1993, and the title was Bizarre Night of UFOs. And this basically describes how a UFO, or unidentified flying objects, were seen glowing in the sky over Ireland. I actually have the audio from it, so I'm going to insert it here now.
Bizarre indeed as it may seem, reports coming in last night from across the country say UFOs were spotted all over the place. Stories of strange flying objects lighting up the night sky abound. So have visitors from outer space finally decided to check out Ireland? RTE newscaster Ken Hammond witnessed the strange phenomena.
I noticed two bright lights, yellow to white in colour, just moving across the sky. Interestingly, they seemed to maintain the same relationship with it, the same distance all of the time. They took a slight turn, very gentle turn. They didn't seem to be falling in altitude or dropping altitude at all.
So you can hear from the audio, the newscaster, Ken Hammond, basically describes that he witnessed lights in the sky, and he doesn't really know what it is. Now, the broadcast goes on to say that an astronomer said that he thinks it could be a burning satellite, but I'm not so sure about that. You know, I think they would have potentially reported on it more if that was the case. But I just found it very interesting that this newscaster basically described seeing it go across the sky, and he was adamant that it didn't kind of lose altitude as far as he was concerned. So I know it's quite difficult to place objects kind of losing altitude if they're like quite high up in the sky, but I just found it quite fascinating that, you know, this newscaster is willing to kind of go on air and talk about what he's seen. I would imagine at the time as well, like, even though it's the 90s, you kind of are still putting your reputation on the line a little bit. You know, pilots are the same as well. You know, you're kind of putting your reputation on the line. There is fear of retaliation or kind of getting a name for yourself. So you kind of have to respect that these people are so certain that they've seen something that's unexplainable that they're willing to come forward and actually kind of put their name to it, which is commendable, to be fair. And the third and final story for today, which again, I find this is actually brilliant. This again is two Aer Lingus pilots, and it's actually from 1997, so even more modern, which is fantastic. This is said to have happened in April 1997 on an Aer Lingus flight from Dublin to Stansted, and the incident occurred just outside London. Both pilots who were flying, they reported a near collision with a mystery red and white craft that pulled alongside them. I love this. They say that this craft basically came out of nowhere, that they didn't know what to do. They genuinely thought that it was going to collide with them, and it was there for a matter of moments and then was gone. They were so shaken by this that they actually reported it immediately, and I think they were kind of effectively planning on being in a collision, like a mid-air collision, which for a pilot, obviously that's terrifying. Anyone, that's terrifying. But I would imagine, especially for pilots, they feel like there's actually nothing they can do here. Like, they've lost control over the situation. If there's an aircraft just coming out of nowhere and they can't move fast enough out of the way, they can't, react in any way. This is like worst case scenario for them, sort of thing. So I can only imagine how it must have felt. And kind of building on this then, they were so certain that they actually had a case, and I think they were so convincing that the British Ministry of Defence actually investigated the case. Like classic X-Files sort of stuff. The government actually investigated it. And interestingly enough, they actually stated that they believed the pilots, and they say that the pilots did actually see something. Now, allegedly, radar reports for the night in question showed that there were no other flights in the area. So I don't know if that necessarily means they didn't pick up something on radar, or they're just not reporting what they found on radar. Either is still, I suppose, it's still a government department investigating. They may have reasons for not reporting what is on the data, but that's just something I wanted to note. But the MOD actually went further with this. So they acknowledged there was something there. They said that the pilots definitely were in trouble and something did happen. But then they actually went that final step and speculated on what they actually thought it could be. And they came out and said that they thought that it was actually a secret US aircraft. They said that they think that it was actually a secret NASA project plane. And they think that that's basically what buzzed up beside this plane and then flew off in another direction. Now, the pilots apparently weren't convinced of this. I'm not sure where I stand on this, but I do find it really fascinating that the Ministry of Defence actually weighed into this and went, yeah, we've investigated it. We agree there was something. We don't know what it is, but here's our thoughts on it. So, I think it just kind of lends credence to the fact that this actually, something did happen in the sky on this night. But yeah, that's kind of the stories that we have today. Just 3 short stories, and then that initial article as well from the start that I found about Irish UFOs. I find this topic fascinating, and I have seen other stories online. I've seen some like Reddit threads and stuff like that in the Irish subreddit for people asking if they've seen lights, and there are quite a few people talking about how they've seen lights in the night sky. I myself saw lights in the night sky around like 2011. I don't really know what it was. It could have been a plane or a helicopter. Didn't seem like it. It seemed to hang in the sky a lot longer than I suppose that you would usually expect of an aircraft, but I'm not 100% convinced either that it was some sort of alien spacecraft. Around that time as well, for some reason in Irish culture, everyone was putting lanterns up into the sky. I don't know why, but it was just a thing that was done at the time. So, you couldn't really trust what was in the sky. And I suppose in like current time, you basically can't trust that what you're seeing just isn't a drone. Someone just flying a drone with a particularly bright light. But yeah, as I said, I find this topic fascinating. I really enjoy the fact that Ireland is such a UFO hotspot. I had no idea about this, so I'll definitely be looking into this further. But I'd love to hear from all of you. I'd love to hear your own experiences, your own thoughts on UFOs in Ireland. Have you actually seen something yourself? Or do you know someone who's seen something, or do you think it's a load of shite? As I said, I'd love to hear. I'd love to get together quite a few stories on this, and it could form maybe a larger episode of our own listeners' personal experiences with UFOs, which would be phenomenal. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this short episode on Irish UFOs. If you'd like to get in touch, you can get us at the spookyaf pod on Instagram, or you can get us at the spookyafpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from anyone who has their experiences on this, or any other experiences of the spooky or the paranormal. It doesn't have to just be UFOs. We'd love to hear from everyone. But with that, I hope you're all having a lovely day whenever it is that you're listening to this, and you've just enjoyed this little bite-sized piece of spookiness today. Take it easy, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.